There we go. Well, that's fun. Well, welcome, everybody. It's great to have you here at the Bridge. Those of you who are joining us online, thanks for being here today as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Groves. I'm the associate pastor here, and I have one fan. All right, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. But we are starting a brand new series today, so you're here on a great day. It's not only got wonderful weather, but here we are starting something brand new. We like new things, right? We are starting today on providential relationships. Who is in your corner? So for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about relationships. Here at the Bridge, our tagline is connecting faith and life. And what is more connected with life than our relationships? All the time, people want to talk to us or hear sermons or hear lessons or teach classes on relationships, on friendships, or I'm not getting along with my wife, or I don't know what to do with my kids, or my teenager's driving me crazy. So over the next few weeks, really hone in and hear what God has to say to you about the relationships in your life. We're going to talk about the ones that you have, the ones that you want to have, the ones that you need to have. You know, next week we're going to be talking about the encourager. Who doesn't like the encourager, right? We're going to be talking about mentors and proteges and things like the editor and the reject. And if you don't know what those means, you're just going to have to come back all the weeks to hear about who's in your corner. Now, when you hear who's in your corner, if you're like me, see, I'm an Enneagram 8. So when I hear who's in your corner, I think I'm the one in the ring, right? But I want you to think of it in two ways. You could be the one in the ring, and there's all the people on the outside, you know, cheering you on and all of that. Or you could think you're one of the people on the outside of the ring, and you're helping somebody else who's on the inside. So all throughout this series, don't make it all about you. Think about others. See, because our relationships determine the direction of our lives. We know this. We understand this, right? My dad used to always say when I was growing up, you are who you associate with. And I understand that because, you know, now having kids of my own, it's like, you hang around that group of kids, you're going to get associated with doing the stuff they do. You're going to start acting like them because when we hang out with people, when we have relationships, it weaves something into the tapestry of our own lives. The Bible uses one another to talk about our relationships. It says, actually there's 100 verses in the Bible that use one another. Some of them are, you know, pray for one another, bear one another's burdens, speak truth to one another. A lot of them say love one another, and the list goes on and on. But as we talk about these relationships and how we one another with each other, we're really talking about the characters in your life, you know, like who are the characters in your life and who are the characters that you are in someone else's life. And when I think about characters, I think about stories and books and movies, and one of them that's just full of incredible characters is one of the best-selling books of all times. It sold over 150 million copies, been made into 3 movies that made $3 billion, and that book is The Lord of the Rings. So, yeah, some of my people, yeah. And in this, you know, there are a lot of great characters, but I want you to think, you know, who's kind of your favorite character? Now, some people would say, like, the hero of the story is Aragorn. I mean, he is the most heroic. Give me the picture of Aragorn here so you know who he is, for those of you who don't. There we go. Aragorn is the most heroic, right? You know, he's got a really cool sword. I have his sword. It's awesome. And one of the movies is called Return of the King. He's the king, right? But I don't think it's his story. Some of you may like Gandalf. Maybe you've heard of Gandalf. He's the wizard who kind of predicts everything, and he's actually a Christ character because he dies and comes back to life. He's the rider on the white horse. Some of you may be thinking, no, my favorite character is Legolas. And Ladies, let's just face it, you like him because he's hot. That's all I ever hear. Look at this, he's hot, he's so cute, okay? But moving on. Most people think the main character is Frodo. Frodo is the little hobbit that destroys the Ring of Power. He stays immune to its evil for a long time and then everything. But you know what? My favorite character isn't any, I love all of them, but my favorite character is Sam. Sam, I love you all. This is great. Sam, to me, is awesome because he's there with Frodo through the whole thing. Here's a little clip of why I love Sam. Let's watch this together.
I wonder if we'll ever be put into song.
Have gotten far without Sam. It's so true. The relationship they had was awesome. They had their friendship started before the events of the book and the movies. It only deepened and intensified during the hard and the perilous times. And it lasted far after the events, and it even lasted up until death. And that's because I think Sam exemplified the relationship we're going to talk about today, and that is a true friend. A true friend. Someone who is with you through the ups and downs. Someone who, even like Sam did for Frodo, will carry you in times when you need it. A true friend. Now, I'm not talking about Facebook friends. I'm not talking about people who are your followers or who will give you likes. I'm not even talking about a casual friend. I'm talking about someone who's loving and caring and devoted. That you can say, I can always depend on him, or I can always trust her, no matter what happens. Now, for most of us, as we really start thinking about this, we really only probably have a very few of these. Some of us, maybe only one. Some of us, maybe none, as we really go through this. I want you to think about that. But to get a better idea of, what we're thinking about and what we're talking about with true friends, I have a few examples that might help you get into what we're doing. Of course, we've already, seen Sam and Frodo. I think they're true friends. Some of you haven't read the books. You haven't seen the movies. I understand. But, you can't have Bert without Ernie, right? True friends, they're always together, right? And how far would Harry Potter have gotten without Ron and Hermione, right? Right? Now, these two didn't start off as friends, but, of course, they're the best friends, and they've got a song written for them. How about Buzz and Woody? You got a friend in me, right? And then, what would Chandler and Ross and Joey do without Rachel and Monica and Phoebe, right? They're called friends. Okay, what about these two guys? Yeah, that's me and Patrick. Yes, circa 1990, right? But we went back to the exact same place 18 years later, so give us the update. There we are. Maybe that looks like us a little bit more. Patrick still had hair. Look at it. Now, we're going back next month, 14 years after that, and we're going to get our picture in the same place on the Riverwalk in San Antonio. But, examples of true friends. True friends. Now, notice I didn't say a best friend, okay? Because as we go through this series, you're going to discover that what best is best depends on what's going on in your life. I'm talking about a true friend. Someone that you can depend on no matter what. Now, there was a guy named Cicero who was a Roman statesman. He was a lawyer, a scholar, a philosopher. He lived about 100 years before Jesus. And I'm going to give a couple of his quotes because he wrote an essay called How to Be a Friend. And it's just really chock full of great things about friends. But Cicero said this: a true friend is, so to speak, a second self. Have you ever met those people that you just feel like, man, they're just like me. I love them. They're like a second me. The Irish call it amankara, which means a soul friend. You know, your souls are kind of combined. It's like you connect on that kind of level. Proverbs puts it this way: there are friends who will destroy each other, but a real friend or a true friend sticks closer than a brother. That's how sometimes you can have a closer relationship with a friend of yours than you do with your own family. It's more than just blood. Now, you could be a true friend with your brother or your sister or with someone else in your family, but a true friend goes beyond that. Have you found a true friend, your soul friend? Have you found that second self? We're going to look in Scripture today and give an example of some true friends. Now, there's a guy in the Old Testament, and his name is Jonathan. Jonathan. Now, some of you may know who he is, and some of you may not, and that's okay. We're going to go through it this morning. But he could have been known, his long-lasting legacy could have been known for a number of things. He could be known as King Saul's son. King Saul was the first king of Israel, and this was his son. Jonathan was his oldest son, the heir apparent to the throne. Okay, he could have been known for that. He could have been known as a skilled military leader, because he was. We're going to hear a story in just a second about his escapades and how he led those into battle. He could have been known as a counselor or an advisor to the king. Not everybody got to speak into the king's life and what was going on and the battle plans and the ways of state and all of that. He was an advisor to the king. He could have also been known as a godly man that was full of faith. You know, he understood that the might of Israel wasn't through kings and armies and wars. Even though he was a skilled military leader, he understood that it was in trust in God Almighty. He could have been known for any of these things. But Jonathan's lasting legacy is that he was a true friend to David. He was a true friend to David. Now, before we get to where David and Jonathan meet, I need to go through a little bit of the backstory of how Jonathan first comes on the scene. And this is in 1 Samuel, like chapters about 14 through 20 is the story of David and Jonathan and all through there. But at the beginning, the first time we ever hear about Jonathan is he is out as a military leader, and he is they're fighting the Philistines, because the Philistines were their neighbors to Israel. And the Philistines were neighbors to Israel like Russia is neighbors to Ukraine, okay? They are oppressive people. The Israelites, when they come by the Philistines, they walk with their heads down, because they won't even let the Israelites have blacksmiths, because they're afraid they're going to make weapons, okay? So they're oppressing the Israelites. And it's during this time that Jonathan is out. They're having little skirmishes, and he's out with some of the Israelite soldiers. And they're at the bottom of a cliff, and the Philistines are up at the top of a cliff. And Jonathan says to his armor bearer, he's like, dude, let's go. It doesn't matter if there is a whole big army or just a couple of us. If God's on our side, we can win. So he goes over to the bottom of the cliff, and the Philistines see them. They said, oh, look, the Israelite rats have come out of their hole. Come on up here, we'll teach you a lesson. So Jonathan and his armor bearer go up there, but it wasn't the Philistines that taught the lesson that day. It was Jonathan and his armor bearer. It was really God through Jonathan and his armor bearer, because they got up there and they killed 20 guys. The two of them killed 20 of the Philistine army. And then it set the rest of the army in a panic. They didn't know what was going on, and they were routed that day. So you see, Jonathan, he's a strong military leader. He's a man of faith, saying, if God's with us, we can do this, okay? And so for a little while, Israel is kind of at peace. But in not too long, Saul kind of goes back to his old ways, and they're kind of in the same place again, where the Philistines they're fighting with them, they're oppressing them, all this kind of stuff. And this leads us to the most famous battle between the Israelites and the Philistines of all time. And that is when the Philistines have this guy named Goliath. Okay, Goliath is a guy, he's 9 foot tall. He's a military man. He's skilled, he's huge, he's tough. And he says, you know what? There's no use this going on where we have all these battles and hundreds and thousands of people on both sides are dying. I'll tell you what, let's just do this. I'll come out to represent the Philistines. You send us your champion. Whoever wins, If I win, you serve us. But if they win, if your person wins, we'll serve you. Okay? Sounds pretty good. Now, some of us have heard the story of David and Goliath, and we think maybe that it's just an analogy for the big guy against the little guy, but it's actually a story that happened. And this is where David comes on the scene. David, at this time, is just a teenager. He's not even old enough to fight in the army, and he comes just to bring food to his brothers. But he sees this giant out there making a mockery of Israel, talking about Israel's God, and no one is standing up to him. Because Goliath did this day after day after day. He'd come out and he'd mock them and say, come on, send me your champion. Now Saul, he didn't go out. Okay, none of the generals of the army went out. The Green Berets were off doing, I don't know what, the SEALs were training. They couldn't even get Chuck Norris to come out to this guy. Not sure what was happening. Jonathan didn't go out either. Now, it doesn't tell us why Jonathan didn't go out, because, he had it in his past that this could happen. But even Jonathan didn't go out. Maybe he thought, man, am I the only one? I can't keep doing this. Maybe he'd lost his mojo. We don't know what happened, but that's where David comes on the scene. And David says, okay, this guy is mocking our God. God is with me. And a lot of us know the story. He'd take a sling and a stone, hits him in the head, guy falls down, kills Goliath, cuts off his head, and once again, the Israelites rout the Philistines and they set them fleeing. Okay, so this sets us up for the first meeting of David and Jonathan. And it picks up in 1 Samuel 17. It says this: as Saul watched David go out to fight the Philistine, he asked Abner, the commander of his army, Abner, whose son is this young man? I really don't know, Abner declared. Well, find out who he is, the king told him. And as soon as David returned from killing Goliath, Abner brought him to Saul with the Philistine's head still in his hand. So this isn't like, hey, later, who was that a couple weeks ago, whatever. No, this just happened. He's like, hey, get that boy. What's going on? He's still got the guy's head in his hand. He's got Goliath's head. Tell me about your father, young man, Saul said. And David replied, his name is Jesse, and we live in Bethlehem. After David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan. Here we go. Here's where we pick up the friendship. He met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them. For Jonathan loved David. And from that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. He loved him as he loved himself. Now, we don't know exactly the age difference, but I researched and studied, and Jonathan is anywhere from 10 to possibly 30 years older than David. See, when I would hear this story, I would think, oh, they're both teenagers and they're buddies and they just meet. But Jonathan's a lot older. So friendship isn't all about age. But it says that he loved David as he loved himself. And he just met him. Now, how can that be? Well, the reason I think is the first characteristic of true friendship we're going to talk about today. And that is, I believe that Jonathan and David shared core values. I believe they shared core values. I believe that Jonathan, he was there. He saw it all. He saw David stand up to Goliath. He saw his faith that God could deliver, and he saw what happened and that God did deliver. He saw him stand up to the king and talk to him, and he said, I remember when I was like that guy. I want to be like that guy again. See, they shared core values. The Bible said that in the verse we just read, it said they had an immediate bond. But other versions of the Bible put it as they became one. Like that event, they became one. Or I love this version. It says their souls were knit together. You ever had anyone in your life that you just felt like your souls were knit together? That's what happened with David and Jonathan. See, our soul is that invisible part of us. We are body. We all see our bodies. Our spirit, communes with God. Our soul is a combination of our will and our knowledge, our mind, and our emotions. And I believe that David and Jonathan saw in each other, especially Jonathan saw from what David did, that their souls were knit together. See, their minds believed the same truths, that God was almighty and that God could deliver them, whether a few or one or many, that if they were in the right and God was with them, their minds believed that he could win together. Their wills were locked on the same purposes of Israel being free and not being oppressed and being what Jehovah God had called them to be. Their emotions responded to the same injustice of being oppressed. They were committed to the same God. They loved the same kingdom. They shared the same dreams. In short, they shared core values. And when we find a true friend, we need to find someone with whom we share core values. Because at the base of who you are, the things that are most important to you, if you find someone that those same things are the most important to them, that will bring the bond. You can be friends to a degree with someone who doesn't have your same core values, but ultimately, there will be a division. When I was in college, I went to Jacksonville State University in Alabama, and I was a music major, okay? So I was a music guy, right? And for those of you who are music guys, music girls, don't be offended by this. Come on, I'm one of you, but music people can be weird. Okay, right? Musicians, they can be a little weird. So you think you know that from high school? Wait till you get to college, and then wait till you're a music major. I mean, there are some people that did not share my core values, okay? They were a little out there sometimes. So my first year at school, this guy walks up to me, and he says, "Are you Jeff Groves?" And I said, "Yes." And I'm thinking, who is this guy, and what does he want? He said, "Do you like girls?" And I said, "Yes, I love them," because not everybody in the music department did, right? And he said, "Do you love Jesus?" And I said, "Yeah, he's the most important thing in my life." And he said, "You're my new best friend." And that's how I met my friend Ray, right? Because he gets here, and his core values were kind of the same as mine, but we couldn't find anyone else in the music department that seemed to share those core values. But we had that kind of immediate bond. So like my core values is, first of all, I love God, okay? That's very important to me. Probably as a pastor, that's a good thing, okay? I'm committed and faithful and loyal to my wife. It's very important. I won't go to lunch or ride in a car with one female that is not my wife or, one of my kids or something like that. I'm committed to my wife. My family is a core value for me. They're very important to me. If they stop by my office, if my wife or any of my kids stop by my office, unless I'm in a meeting with someone or counseling or something, I will stop what I'm doing on the computer and give them my attention because they're important to me, and that's one of my core values. Honesty, integrity, these kind of things are core values for me, and I want to live my life for God. I want everything I do to point to Him and have a life pleasing to God. So what are your core values? I want you to think about those, because if you're going to find a true friend, you need to find someone who's gone to the same place that you are. The next characteristic of true friendship is that true friends love each other unselfishly. It's not all about them. It's unselfishly. Let's look at David and Jonathan again. It says, Jonathan made a pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. We read that. But he continues on and says, Jonathan sealed this pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David, together with his tunic, his sword, his bow, and his belt. Now, when Jonathan took off his robe, this wasn't just like, yeah, that's my jean jacket or whatever. You look kind of cold. Here you go, dude. Right? Okay? When he took off his robe, this is his royal robe. This signified that he was the next king. He's the crown prince. This was a symbol of his authority. And he gave it to this little shepherd boy from the sticks who was much younger than him. And he gave it to him. He also gave him his tunic, his bow, his belt, and his sword. Remember, swords were pretty scarce. This was a big deal. Jonathan was unselfish with his friendship with David. He told him, basically by doing this, anything I have is yours. Anything you need, I'll give it to you. See, a friend wants to give without any idea of getting paid back. That's a true friend. It's not a quid pro quo. It's not a, I'll give you this if you give me that. It's like, no, here you go. I'll give this stuff. You need it. That's the kind of friend I want to be to people. John the Baptist put it this way in talking about Jesus. He said, he, Jesus, must become greater and greater, and I must become less and less. That's a true friend. That's an example. That's his cousin, right? That's an example of where family and friendship did come together. But a true friend will say, look, you take the lead. You can be better and better. I can be less. It's okay. I'll be here to support you. Jesus put it this way. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for his friends. And he didn't only say it, but he also lived it. He paid the greatest sacrifice for his friends. And it wasn't just the ones that were right there with him that day. It was so that you and I would have the opportunity to call him friend today. Jesus laid down his life for us. So that's the things we can do that help us with friends. But what are friendship killers? The first friendship killer I want to talk today is selfishness. Selfishness. Now, when you meet someone, take inventory. I'm not going to make you raise your hand here, but just think in yourself. When you meet someone, how do you approach them and the possible relationship? Do you think it's like, hey, what's in this for me? Are they going to give me likes? Are they going to feed my ego? Are they going to make me feel better about myself? Maybe they can advance my career, or if they can't do that, they can at least introduce me to someone with more prestige and more power that can help me out. Is that the kind of friendships that we have? Is that the way we approach friendships? Be careful when you do that, because some people don't really want friends. Some people only want fans. And if they can't do something for them, if they can't give them the likes, when they stop feeding their ego, they're out. Don't be that kind of friend. Real friends are unselfish. Don't be selfish. The next characteristic of true friendship is true friends have a deep loyalty to each other through all seasons. They're loyal through good and bad. Now, of course, it was easy for Jonathan to be loyal to David when things were going well. Hey, he's the new hero who just killed Goliath. Hey, this is my best friend, right? When things were going good with the king, and he said, yeah, come, don't go home. You're going to stay in my court. Easy to do. When David's playing the harp to help Jonathan's dad, Saul, with a spirit that's tormenting him, everything's good, right? But Jonathan was loyal even in the hard times as well. 1 Samuel 20:13 says this, but if the king is angry and wants you killed, may the Lord strike me, this is Jonathan talking, may the Lord strike me and even kill me if I don't warn you, David, so that you can escape and live. He's loyal to David, even when things start to go not so great. Right? Because Saul becomes jealous of David and he wants to kill him. But Jonathan stands up for his friend. He is even more loyal to his friend than he is to his dad, to his king. But I don't think it's so much that he was trying to be disloyal to his dad, who is the king. I think that he was ultimately being loyal to God because his dad was doing the wrong thing and David was in the right. But Jonathan not only showed loyalty to David when David was in a rough time, but he even showed loyalty to David when it was at the risk of his own life. 1 Samuel 20:30 says this, Saul boiled with rage at Jonathan. You stupid son of a whore. Yes, that's in the Bible. He swore at him. Don't you think that I know that you want him, David, to be king in your place? Shaming yourself and your mother? As long as this son of Jesse is alive, you'll never be king. Now go and get him so I can kill him. But why? Why should he be put to death? Jonathan asked his father. What has he done? And then Saul hurled his spear at Jonathan, intending to kill him. So at last, Jonathan realized that his father was really determined to kill David. Even at the risk of his own life, Jonathan was a true friend. He stayed loyal during all seasons, not just the good times, but he stayed loyal during the tough times as well. We talked about selfishness being a friendship killer. Another friendship killer is jealousy. See, that's one thing you never see as you read through the relationship with David and Jonathan. You don't see jealousy. When Jonathan met David, and it says that he loved him as he loved himself, he didn't have to say, hey, you've probably heard the stories. You're kind of young, but you probably heard the stories where I kind of did the same thing. I had to climb up a cliff to kill these Philistines, just 2 of us. And we killed 20. I mean, I know you killed that one guy. He was pretty big and everything, but we killed 20. I mean, that's 10 apiece. And really, I did more than my armor bearer. I'm a man of faith, too. There was no jealousy. There was no qualifying. There was none of that. No hint of that in their relationship. See, jealousy, if you're jealous of your friend, it will derail your relationship. Maybe the part of that last point that we had was not so much the jealousy, but it was the unwilling to pay the cost of what is through all seasons. It's like, okay, I'll be with you and I'll stand with you, but sometimes things are tough. Sometimes things get hard, and I'll help you out for a day or two, but are you willing to stand with those friends that need a lot of help? When they go through a really rough time, all seasons can seem daunting. Ask yourself, am I willing to shoulder the burden with them? Am I willing to walk through this entire process with them? Am I willing to take the time and the energy to continue to build this friendship? I'm so glad and thankful in my life that I can say there were people there for me. A few years back, I went through the darkest, hardest time of my life. And remember that guy that I told you about that in school that I met and said, hey, you're my new best friend? Years and years and years later, he was very key in helping me. He helped me walk through depression and a breakdown and losing my confidence. And my life was just shattered. He was there for me, and he spent the time. He paid the cost. And I had other friends. I had my friend Andy in Alabama, my friend Tripp, who lives in Ohio, that we were friends as kids. He was like, do I need to drive down there 12 hours to be with you? I'm so thankful that I had some deep friends. Of course, Patrick was here. There was a number of you in the church who reached out to me. But to be a true friend, you've got to be willing to walk through the hard times with other people. The next characteristic of friendship is that true friends are transparent with each other. They're transparent with each other. Transparency says what you see is what you get. But it goes beyond that. It also says what you see is what you get, but I'm not holding anything back. Oh, that's where it starts to get tough, isn't it? I'm not holding anything back because we like to, be safe and play our cards close. Not let anyone see some of those things. That's not what David and Jonathan did. 1 Samuel 20 says this, then David took an oath before Jonathan, and he said, your father knows perfectly well about our friendship. So he has said to himself, I won't tell Jonathan. Why should I hurt him? But I swear to you, Jonathan, I swear to you that I am only a step away from death. Never, never, Jonathan exclaimed. You know that if I had the slightest notion that my father was planning to kill you, I would tell you at once. I would be transparent with you. Jonathan was transparent in what he knew. He was transparent with David. He was basically saying, when I know it, you'll know it. I'm not holding anything back. I'm not looking out for myself. He's throwing a spear at me too. I will tell you, true friendship is open and transparent and vulnerable, and they don't hold anything back. There's an even deeper example of their transparency. Later on, in 1 Samuel 20, verse 41, it says this, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and they wept together. But David wept the most. They weren't afraid to be transparent with their emotions. Now, when it says they kissed each other, don't let your mind go anywhere crazy. In that time and in many cultures today, people will greet each other and they'll give you the kiss on either side. It was something like that. You know, some people actually want to say that David and Jonathan had a homosexual relationship, but that is not what the Bible said. Our culture just can't seem to understand a pure, deep relationship between two men or two women, but that's what we're talking about right here. Don't get sidetracked. The point of this is that they kissed each other, they hugged each other, they wept together. David and Jonathan were not afraid to show each other their emotions, to cry in front of one another. They were transparent, not only with what they knew, but they were transparent with their emotions. Guys, when's the last time that you hugged another guy? I don't mean this one. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, good to see you, dude. I mean a real hug. Because you needed a hug. Because he needed a hug. Ladies, when's the last time you've done that? It's tough, but we need, if we're going to have true friendships, we need to be able to do that. Now, ladies, I know it can be hard for you, but guys, let's face it, I really think it's harder for men to show our emotions. I mean, our culture has taught us that. From a young age, we hear things like, come on, big boys don't cry. Don't be a sissy. Man up. Aren't you a little too big to be sitting on your daddy's lap? Men, we are taught from a young age to hide our emotions. That being a real man is hiding our emotions, but that is just not true. That is a lie from the pit of hell. David and Jonathan didn't do that. They showed their emotions. And if we're going to be true friends to someone, if we're going to be a true friend for someone else, or someone is going to be for us, we're going to have to share our emotions. Clinical psychologist David Montgomery uses the image of an elevator to explore the meanings and the depth of trust and transparency. And now, guys, we don't mind our elevators going up, right? We don't mind our elevators going up to success or up to notoriety, but some of us, our down elevators are broken. We don't want to go down to the depths that it takes to be a true friend. See, the first level is pretty easy. It's the fact level. It's just the fact level. And that's where you're just talking about the facts. It's just like, hey, it's hot out today. Hey, did you see the score of the game last night? Yeah, that was pretty good. How you doing? You can do this with complete strangers. The next level down is the opinion level. Now, this is where we start to meet people and we start to get a little bit more of a relationship. It's more about what you're thinking than just the facts, right? You share your opinion, what's on your mind. You might even start to talk about some of the hot topics like, sex or religion or politics or marriage. But this level is still really only about what you think, not who you are. And so many of us, unfortunately, we stop at this level right here. We stop right here. You might meet someone who is an Enneagram 7, right? I've mentioned that a couple of times. If you don't know about the Enneagram, we have a series that we did last year. You should go back and listen to it. It helps you to know how God made you, okay? But Enneagram 7 is a people person, okay? You might see a very sanguine personality, someone who connects easily with others, and you might think, man, they have so many friends. But they might feel like, no, I have a lot of acquaintances, and I don't have any real friends. I don't have any deep friends. Maybe you feel like that. That's because you've stopped at this level where you only give your opinion about what you think. Let's ride the elevator down to the next level, which is the emotional level or the friend level. This is where real friendship really starts. This is not just about your opinions and what you think, but you're starting to share who you are. In this level, we start looking for compatibility and empathy and mutual trust. But you must be willing to share your emotions and be emotionally vulnerable. It's tough, guys, I know. But this is a level where you convey your hopes and your fears, your disappointments and your defeats. And then if you get there, you might be able to go down to the last level. And that's the transparent level or the intimacy level. This is deeper than just the emotional level. This is what's deep inside of you. This is where you're not covering anything up. You share your dark side, the things that you're not proud of. You share your memories, your wounds, your reflections, the things that make you who you are. even the things that you're ashamed of. Now, I know you might think that, and I've heard people say it, no, if you really knew the real me, you would run the other way. But when you find a true friend in these providential relationships, the ones that God puts you together with, right? The ones you're following God and you're seeking God together. When God puts you together, you'll find that in those dark times, I found out that they didn't run the other way, that they actually leaned in. Don't you want that kind of relationship? I think we all do. That's the kind of relationship we should all have with our spouse. Some of you may be sitting here today going, I can't even share that openly with my spouse. That's a goal for you today. Maybe you need to talk to them and say, I don't think we have that. I'd like to have that. We have marriage mentors at the church that can help you. Maybe you want to see a counselor. Maybe you want to see a therapist. There's nothing wrong with those words. Those are good things. This is the kind of relationship you should have with your spouse. But you can also have it, two men can have this relationship, this deep relationship, like Jonathan and David. Two women can have this kind of deep relationship. I do want to warn you, though, don't try to go to the depth of this relationship with a member of the opposite sex who is not your spouse. You're looking for trouble, okay? You can have that with another guy. Guys, ladies, you can have that with another lady. You should have it with your spouse. But be very, very careful about being this vulnerable with someone else because there's a connection there. God meant it that way, but keep it in the priorities that He wants it. See, the transparent, intimate kind of relationship, it transcends space and time, seasons and circumstances. I mean, my friend in Ohio that I told you about, I hadn't seen him in years, but when the hard time came, man, he was there for me because our friendship went beyond that. Sometimes these kind of friendships even transcend death. Let's look to David and Jonathan again. Jonathan and his father Saul were killed in battle, and David wrote this song. It's the beginning of 2 Samuel, and it's called David's Song for Saul and Jonathan. It says this: Then David composed a funeral song for Saul and Jonathan, and he commanded that it be taught to the people of Judah. Okay, so before we go on, it's not just I'm going to be open with my emotions. He commanded, it's a song, let's teach it to everybody. Okay? And it goes on, and this is what he says. Jonathan lies dead on the hills. How I weep for you. Open with his emotions. My brother Jonathan. Oh, how much I loved you. And your love for me was deep. Deeper than that of the love of women. See, sometimes when we got the male-female relationship, there is the sex thing involved, and there's all the things that go on. And David, became king and had many wives, but what he had with Jonathan was special. It was deep. It was something beyond what even he could have with a woman. There was a deep relationship where they were just open and vulnerable with one another. That's transparency. Man, that is true friendship. Last characteristic of true friendship that I want to talk about today is that a true friend makes you a better person. They make you a better person. See, they see your potential and they want you to reach that potential. And they'll support you. They'll be your biggest cheerleader. And they're the ones who will encourage you. We'll hear more about that in the sermon next week, about the encourager. They say things like, how can I help you become the person that God wants you to be? See, that's the kind of friend I want to be. I want to be the kind of friend that says, how can I help you be all that God has made you to be? I'm okay to stand in the background. I'm okay to be less and less as you become more and more. Cicero, again, says it this way: a true friend will challenge you to become better because he appreciates the potential inside of you. They'll encourage you. They'll be their biggest fan. But you know what? They'll also tell you the things that you need to hear, not just the things you want to hear and you want them to say. They'll tell you about the things you need to hear. We'll hear more about this on July 3rd in the sermon series. They're open and they'll tell you things. Friends don't lie. That's what 11 says on Stranger Things. Proverbs puts it this way: wounds from a friend can be trusted. What do you mean wounds? Why would a friend wound me? When they tell you the things that you need to hear that maybe you don't want to hear. That's a real friend. That's a real friend. Even if it hurts, even if they tell you and it hurts, they'll tell you anyway because they love you enough. Antisthenes, the cynic, said this: there are only two people who can tell you the truth about yourself. An enemy who has lost his temper and a friend who loves you dearly. Our old buddy Cicero says, there are plenty of people in the world who will flatter you for their own purposes, but only a real friend, only a true friend or an enemy will risk your anger by telling you the truth. When I graduated college, I had been dating this girl for, a year or more. And, I'm a Christian, she's a Christian. I'm graduating college, she's graduating in a year. What do? Your next step is you get engaged, right? So we got engaged. So she's still at school, and I'm starting into ministry. And from the picture you saw earlier that Patrick and I have been friends for many years. Patrick and I have been friends since we were teenagers together in youth group. It was about 10 years ago or so. But I'm engaged to this girl that I've been dating for a long time, and I find out later from some mutual friends that Patrick said this to them. He said, Jeff is a real friend, and we've had a really great friendship, but I have to tell him something that might ruin it all. It might end our friendship. And he came to me and he told me, he said, look, dude, I love you, but Jackie is not the one you're supposed to marry. She's just not. Maybe it's none of my business. Maybe I shouldn't be telling you this. But he took enough courage to come and stand up to me and say that. Now, luckily, God had already been dealing with me about the same thing. And it wasn't what are you talking about? Get out of my face. It was like, yeah, I know. God's been dealing with me. Thank you for that confirmation. But you know what? It took guts. It took a real friend to say, man, this might ruin our friendship, but I have to do it because it's the right thing. That is a true friend. That's the kind of friend that we need to have. That's the kind of friend that we need to be. So as we were going through this, I want you to just think, who is coming to your mind? Who has been a Jonathan to you? To whom have you been a Jonathan? Who's the Sam to your Frodo? Who's the Buzz to your Woody? Most of us have a short list, right? I hope that you've at least made the decision to make Jesus a true friend. If you haven't and you're not sure about that, in just a few minutes we're going to end and there's going to be prayer partners on the sides and you can talk to them about that. Because he's a friend that will never fail you. He's a friend that is always with you and he died for you. One more time from our old buddy Cicero. He says, if when I die, I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of true friends I have, I would be the wealthiest person on the planet. True friends share core values. They love each other unselfishly. They have a deep loyalty to each other through all seasons. They're transparent, and they'll make you a better person. So your action items today, what do you do with this? Excuse me. We're talking about providential relationships, the ones that God helps you with. Identify the Jonathans in your life and continue to nurture those relationships. If you've got a Jonathan, if you've got someone who is a deep, true friend, nurture those relationships. Maybe you have more than one. Don't take it for granted. But more importantly probably, be a Jonathan to someone else. Be a true friend. See, if you want to have a true friend, you need to first be a true friend. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you, God, that you care about us, that you care about our relationships. Father, you care so much that you sent your son, Jesus, to have relationship with us and to be an example, to be the ultimate example, who gave his life for his friends, who gave his life for us. God, as we go from here, help us to take stock of who we are. Are we in our friendships for what they can give us or how we can make them successful? Do we stop at the level of our emotions, or are we able to go deeper and to share really who we are, not just what we think with people? God, I know it's scary, but give us the courage to go deep with people, to have the kind of true friendship like David and Jonathan had. God, it fulfills us. It lets us know just a little bit of what our relationship with you can be like, where we can be totally transparent, where we can just share everything. You already know the things we're ashamed of. You know the things that we've done. But God, you still love us. And I thank you that you give us friends that can love us like that as well. God, let us all know that we're not alone. Thank you for your example. We love you, Lord. Draw us closer together to you, with you, and closer together with our friends. In Christ's name, amen.